Have you ever sat across from someone who said all the right things, but something inside you just didn't sit right? Like the room felt still but heavy, a quiet tension you couldn't explain. Their smile was warm, their tone polite, yet your gut whispered, something's off. That feeling, it's not paranoia, it's perception. More often than not, it's your subconscious catching a truth your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, had a name for that hidden feeling: the shadow. It's the part of ourselves we repress, deny, or bury: resentment, jealousy, judgment. And yet, it always finds a way to surface. Not always through words, but through tone, tension, energy. And sometimes it speaks loudest through the people closest to us. Here's the truth: not all hostility looks like hate. Sometimes it wears a smile. It shows up as concern, support, even friendship. But underneath, there's comparison, competition, quiet sabotage. And the most dangerous part? It's not always intentional. People who haven't faced their own wounds often project them onto others, especially those who make them feel inadequate. So, how do you spot it? How do you know when a friend isn't really a friend? What if I told you the ones who smile the most might be the ones who resent you the deepest? In today's video, we'll break down 8 subtle but powerful signs that someone close to you may be hiding toxic emotions: resentment, envy, even hatred. These signs aren't loud. They're psychological, subtle. But once you recognize them, you'll never unsee them. And sign number 8? It's the one that flips the mirror because it doesn't just reveal others, it changes how you see yourself. Let's begin. And let's start with something you've probably felt before, but maybe didn't realize was happening. Have you ever had someone make a sarcastic remark that stung a little too hard? Maybe they joked about something personal: your appearance, your career, your past. And when you reacted, they immediately brushed it off. Come on, don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. You know I'm only teasing. But you didn't laugh. You felt humiliated, or maybe just a little smaller than you were before. This isn't just harmless banter. This is something deeper. Sarcasm is one of the most socially acceptable forms of contempt. And when someone uses it repeatedly, especially towards your vulnerabilities, it's no longer just about humor. It becomes a mask, a disguise, a way to express hostility without ever being called out for it. Because here's the truth: people who mock you with a smile are often hiding the resentment they don't want to admit. Carl Jung believed that what we repress in ourselves, the anger, the envy, the fear, doesn't disappear. It leaks out, and often it shows up in the way we treat others, especially those who unknowingly trigger something unresolved within us. So, if you've noticed someone in your life constantly making you the punchline, if their jokes seem to circle around the same painful topics again and again, that's not random. That's contempt, cleverly disguised. The worst part? They'll make you feel like the problem, like you're overreacting or too emotional. But you're not. You're feeling something real. Because when sarcasm starts to feel like a weapon, it's not a joke anymore. It's a message. And recognizing that message, it's the first step in protecting your peace. Have you ever noticed someone close to you constantly forgetting to share key information right when you needed it most? Or maybe they gave you advice that seemed helpful at first, but somehow sent you 2 steps backward? It's easy to brush it off. They probably just didn't think of it. They were trying to help. But when it happens again and again, especially during pivotal moments, you have to wonder, is it really just coincidence? Here's the uncomfortable truth: not all sabotage comes in the form of direct attack. Sometimes it slips through the cracks. Quiet, casual, almost invisible. A forgotten reminder, a missed message. Advice that sounds supportive, but subtly steers you away from your goals. And here's what most people don't realize: sometimes the people who say, "I've got your back," are the ones unconsciously pulling you down. Carl Jung believed that when people don't face their own failures, they project those insecurities onto others. It's not always malicious. In fact, they may not even realize they're doing it. But their internal conflict becomes your external obstacle. Think about it. If someone feels threatened by your growth, by the fact that you're evolving while they're stuck, they might unconsciously try to keep things equal, balanced, not by rising up, but by quietly dragging you down. It's like emotional gravity, and the weight, it always shows up when you're about to rise. So, if every time you're close to a breakthrough, something accidentally derails your progress, pay attention. Patterns don't lie. True support helps you fly. Subtle sabotage clips your wings and then hands you a smile. And the sooner you see the difference, the freer you become. Have you ever shared something you're proud of? A personal win? A goal you finally reached? Only to have someone immediately shift the spotlight back to themselves. You tell them, "I just got promoted." And they respond, "Oh, that's cool." Carl Jung believed that people project the parts of themselves they haven't yet accepted, especially the ones they feel insecure about. And for many, seeing someone else thrive doesn't inspire them. It agitates something they've tried to suppress, their own unfulfilled potential. So instead of celebrating you, they'll try to match you, or one-up you, or worse, diminish what you've achieved to make themselves feel okay. The saddest part? It's not always about malice. Sometimes it's about identity. If your progress threatens their sense of worth, they'll do whatever it takes, subconsciously, to level the playing field. They can't stand that you're moving forward, because it forces them to confront the fact that they're not. So ask yourself, do they ever let the moment be about you? Or do they always need the last word, the better story, the bigger win? True friends cheer for you without turning it into a scoreboard. But silent competitors, they clap and quietly prepare their next move. The more you succeed, the more their insecurity whispers, you can't let them get ahead. And once you spot that energy, you'll never unsee it again. You know what real support feels like. It's warm, present, unmistakable.
It shows up for you when it matters most, when you're nervous before a leap or glowing after a win. But what about those people who say they care, yet somehow just aren't there when it counts? You get good news, and their reaction is flat. You hit a milestone, and they're nowhere to be found. They downplay your success, or worse, ignore it altogether. And over time, their silence becomes louder than any words. Here's the truth most people miss. Not everyone who smiles in your face is rooting for your rise. Carl Jung called this emotional detachment, ego dissociation. It's what happens when someone is so disconnected from their own emotions that they become numb to yours. But it doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from discomfort. Your progress might remind them of where they've stalled. Your joy might stir something in them they haven't felt in years. And instead of leaning in, they pull away. They might say things like, "Wow, that's cool," with no follow-up. Or, "You're lucky," as if what you've built was handed to you. They don't challenge you. They don't celebrate you. They just exist around you. But pay attention. True supporters lean in when you rise. They show up for the hard moments and the highlights. So if someone constantly minimizes your achievements, disappears during your big moments, or leaves you feeling emotionally unmet, that's not support. That's indifference dressed as friendship. And if you have to second guess whether someone is proud,
Sometimes control doesn't show up with a raised voice or a strict rule book. Sometimes it shows up wearing a smile, offering advice you never asked for. You've probably heard it.
I'm just looking out for you.
I'd hate to see you make a mistake. Or the classic,
If I were you, I wouldn't do that.
at first it sounds like concern, maybe even love, but over time you start to feel a little smaller, less certain, more dependent, because every time you make a decision, they plant just enough doubt to make you second guess yourself. And that doubt, it doesn't come from you. Here's the truth. When someone constantly questions your choices under the guise of caring, what they're really doing is keeping you within their control. Carl Jung believed that the need to control others often comes from a deep fear of internal chaos. People who can't regulate their own uncertainty seek to manage yours so they don't have to face their own instability. So, what looks like love is often fear in disguise. You'll notice it when they're only supportive if your choices align with their values, or when they start advising you in a way that makes you feel incapable instead of empowered. The goal isn't to guide you, it's to tether you, to create a version of you that needs their input. Because if you start trusting yourself fully, their influence fades. Real care supports your independence. Real love stands beside your freedom, not above it. So ask yourself, do they leave you feeling stronger or more uncertain? Because when help starts to sound like control, it's time to stop calling it love and start calling it what it is. Sometimes the knife doesn't come straight at you. Sometimes it moves through whispers, sideways glances, a room that suddenly feels colder and you don't know why. You haven't changed, but something around you has. Friends stop reaching out. Colleagues act distant. You walk into a space you once felt safe in, and now you feel like a stranger. It's not in your head, it's in the shadows of conversations you were never invited to. Because here's the harsh truth. When someone can't confront you directly, they'll often try to destroy you quietly, through other people's ears. They gossip. They twist your words. They sow just enough doubt to make others question your integrity, your motives, or your heart. And you don't find out until the damage is already done. Carl Jung explained this behavior perfectly. He believed that people who are uncomfortable with their own flaws will project those insecurities onto others. Talking behind your back becomes a way to avoid facing what's broken within themselves. They can't handle feeling small, so they make you smaller in the eyes of others. But gossip isn't harmless. It's corrosive. It changes how people see you without giving you a voice to defend yourself. It chips away at your reputation bit by bit until the isolation. So what can you do? Pay attention to shifts. Who suddenly pulls away? Who looks at you differently without a clear reason? Because behind those subtle changes, there's often a voice that never had the courage to speak to you directly. And when you realize who's been shaping the room around you with whispers, remember this: what they say about you reveals more about them than it ever will about you. Think about the last time you achieved something meaningful, maybe a new job, a personal breakthrough, or just a moment where you finally felt proud of yourself. Now, who celebrated with you? Did they smile with genuine excitement? Or did you sense something colder, a silence, a subtle change of tone, maybe even a quick shift in conversation? Because here's the thing, true friends don't just support you when you're down. They rise with you when you win. But some people, they can't handle your shine. And when you succeed, they flinch inside. Why? Because your success feels like a mirror reflecting everything they haven't yet achieved. And here's what most people miss. The people who struggle to celebrate you are often the ones who quietly resent that you're doing what they couldn't. You'll notice it in little things, a dry, "oh, that's cool," a forced smile, or worse, a passive-aggressive comment like, "that's not such a big deal," or "I did that years ago." What's happening beneath the surface isn't about you. It's about them and their unhealed sense of inadequacy. Carl Jung spoke to this directly. He said that when someone can't feel joy for others, it reflects an internal wound, a part of themselves they've denied or left undeveloped. And instead of asking, why does their success bother me, they deflect, they minimize, they pretend not to care. But energy never lies. Sometimes the truth isn't in what people say, it's in what their body won't let them hide. A forced smile, a sudden shift in tone, avoiding eye contact just as you're sharing something meaningful. You felt it before, the tension in a room when no one speaks but everything is being said. Here's the quiet truth. Even when words lie, the body always tells the truth. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious leaks out through subtle signals, things even we can't fully control. A stiff hand, a glance that drops too quickly, a compliment that sounds just a little too rehearsed. These micro reactions matter. They're like emotional fingerprints, proof of how someone really feels. So pay attention to the energy behind the words. If their body stiffens when you succeed, if their voice flattens when they're happy for you, if silence falls at moments that should feel celebratory, don't ignore it, because beneath the performance, their truth is trying to speak. And once you learn to read the unspoken, you'll never be fooled by words again. So if someone consistently reacts with distance, sarcasm, or dismissal every time you grow, take it for what it is. Not as a personal failure, but as a quiet confession of their own. Real support is loud. It's warm. It shows up. Fake support? It hides behind indifference. And that silence speaks volumes. So here's what it all comes down to. Not all enemies shout. Some smile. Some offer advice. Some disappear when you rise. And call it coincidence. Hostility doesn't always wear a mask of anger. Sometimes it wears politeness. Sometimes it looks like just a joke or just being honest. But your body knows. Your instincts know. Because here's the truth. Your intuition picks up on truths your mind hasn't fully processed yet. Carl Jung taught us that we all carry a shadow, parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or project onto others. And when someone hasn't faced their own pain, their own fear, their own failure, they project it onto you. That's why paying attention to patterns, emotional shifts, body language, inconsistencies, isn't paranoia, it's protection. So trust how people make you feel, not just what they say. Trust that quiet discomfort. Trust the energy in the room, because words can lie, but energy never does. And the more you honor what your body already knows, the harder it becomes for false kindness to get past your guard.